I'm Alana Morales.
And I'm Joshua Mendes.
And we're here to discuss the banner that was posted in late October on top of LCAC stating America is a white nation, then given the link www.bloodtosoil.org.
This created a lot of uproar on campus, and even a response banner was posted saying America is not a white nation.
Josh and I were able to go around and ask some professors as well as students here on campus what they thought of the event.
I have no doubt that it affects staff and faculty just like it affects students. And when you say they put up the banner, let's be very specific that someone came and put that up. But I don't believe it was a university member. I don't believe it was officially an official university banner. It certainly wasn't. And so I think we're all sort of bothered, that these kinds of hateful messages are being displayed. But consider how they're being displayed. Someone comes in the dead of night and puts it up for everyone to see in the morning. Because, they're not doing that in the middle of the day. They're not doing that, when the sun is out. But we all know what's going on. They're trying to scare people. And I think it's despicable, those kinds of tactics, to try to scare people. My message to them, they who come and put banners like that up, is that we're not scared. I'm still here at work. I'm a person of color. Maybe they're targeting me, but I don't care. I have a job to do. My job is to educate. And in the face of such ignorance and racism, my response is I'm not scared, and I'll be back here tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, because this is my job.
It is believed that the perpetrators acted overnight, and students returned to campus the following morning to find the banner posted. Upon seeing the banner, most students were outraged and began tweeting and sharing what had happened.
We doubt this will be the last offense here on the university's campus, but we encourage everyone to stick together through these hateful acts. For Texas State Media, I'm Alana Morales.
And I'm Josh Mendes.
You see with Texas State being made up more than half of them being minorities and San Marcos being primarily a Hispanic population, do you see if the two were to come together that we could possibly, I don't want to say erase racism here in San Marcos because that's always going to be a thing, but do you think, seeing how this is an every semester kind of thing, if we came together, we could stop at least the amount of times that it's happening?
Yeah, I think that's the wrong gauge. I mean, I don't know that we're going to be able to eradicate racist thoughts and behaviors. There are people that are going to believe this because there are ignorant people. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. And why are they doing it here? They're doing it here on a campus that embraces diversity, on a campus that is widely diverse, on a campus that is a symbol of education. Why are they putting it on Alkek Library? Alkek Library is the seat of knowledge, right? I mean, it sort of is the reservoir of research and access to resources. It's a symbol of education. So I'm not surprised that they try to put the banner up there because they think that's what things are really about. I look at that and say, well, they're just ignorant. They need to be educated. And so when you talk about, does the San Marcos community need to band with Texas State? Well, we're all together in this. We're all in this. And no one's at fault, but because, I teach the media law class, which talks a lot about freedom of speech and the First Amendment. And people have the right to express themselves. But that doesn't mean they have the right to commit vandalism. That doesn't mean they have the right to put up a banner wherever they want. So our response should be, well, I wish they didn't do that. But we can't stop them from doing it. If someone sees them putting it up, I would hope authorities get called and people get arrested, and that's how you stamp that out. But stamping out racism is a much larger task, and that's going to take a lot of effort by a lot of people over a long period of time. And I often, in dark times when things are really troubling, I like to refer to the Martin Luther King Jr. quote about the arc of justice is long, but it bends toward justice. And I really think that's true when you look over history. And so there are times when it looks like justice isn't being served, when things are just awful. But people persevere because people have hope that things are going to get better. And that's how I try to live my life, because to live otherwise is not any life at all. To live in fear, to feel like people have different ideas than mine. I think it's healthy to know that these folks are out there. They're letting us know this is what they believe. Okay, thanks for letting us know, because we don't agree. And you see the response by the community. And my message to anyone that feels scared, is to try to put on a brave front and know that is the exception. That is not how most people here at Texas State feel about students of color. It is not how residents in San Marcos or Central Texas feel about them, because we are them. And we're here, and they're welcome here, and they're here to get an education, and my job is to educate. So that's how I look at the whole thing. I mean, we're all in this together is the way I look at it.
And last question, do you see this getting better? Because I know you had mentioned as it gets better. Do you see it here on campus, or just as a community, do you see this getting better, this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it gets better because people are expressing themselves and people are responding, right? If the answer was, let's silence these groups, right? Let's say this group that puts up these banners, let's ban them so they can't exist. Well, are they going to disappear? No, they're just going to go underground. They're just going to try to hide in the shadows. They feel emboldened for some reason. We don't have to get into that, but they feel emboldened to be able to express these views. But now is the pushback that we don't agree with them and we don't value their values, that it's not the same. And so, I think it's sort of a gut check, for Central Texas, the community, but also for the country. What are we about? What are our values? And how are we going to live up to those aspirations? And so, I don't think that this is an issue that's going to go away. But I think that the more that these kind of things happen, the stronger the response is going to be. And that's the key. I would say to people, don't be upset that someone expressed something terrible. Be encouraged that people stood up to that and said that they're wrong. Because that's where the true bravery is, and that's where the true integrity of people exists. It's in the hearts of all of us. And I think that's how it gets expressed.
Is there something you want to ask?
Yeah, and I remember you were talking about the First Amendment, and in class we were talking about, for example, the cross burning case.
Right.
I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
R.A. v. St. Paul and Virginia v. Black.
The cross burning cases, and even I guess the fighting words.
Chaplinsky v. New Hampshire.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So they have the right to make these statements, but I guess my question is, if it were to escalate, whatever the situation is, do you think it could hold up in court? Do you think, how do you think the situation could go or would go?
Yeah, so, it's all fact dependent. It depends on the case, depends on the circumstances. But what I do know is that if someone is expressing something, no matter what it is, the response, physical response, a violent response, is never acceptable under the First Amendment, because the First Amendment doesn't protect violent action. It protects speech and expression. So if someone expresses something terrible, right, something you totally disagree with, my answer from the First Amendment perspective, free speech perspective, is you let them express it, because they're exposing themselves for what they are. And the response is to say, well, I think you're wrong, and here's why. But as soon as you resort to violence, as soon as you resort to trying to ban or censor unpopular ideas, then you have to ask yourself, well, who gets to make that decision? Right? Do you get to make that decision? Does the government make that decision? Does it depend on who's in office? Well, then you don't want that, because if you let someone else make that decision, then they're taking that decision making out of your hands. I would say, look, if the white supremacists have a good idea, well, let's hear it. And I'll consider it. I'm a person of color. They probably don't want to express it to me, but I'll give them a chance. I'm pretty sure I know what they're about. I've seen it on their banners, and I don't agree with it. But I've given them a chance to express themselves. And my response is, well, I disagree with you. And here's why. Here are my values. And I'm confident that most people in the country share those values. And so, these are outliers, these banners and these things that are being expressed, I think, are just made to scare people. They're made to seem like that's the majority view, and it's not. It just is not the majority view. So I would say, speech should be protected, and I want to be the one to make the decision about whether I want to hear it or not, whether I want to consider it or not. I don't want to just let someone else decide, the government or anybody else decide for me. And consider this: if a group gets silenced, maybe you're happy because you don't like that group. But that tool, whatever it was to silence that group, can be used to silence groups you agree with. And so that's why the First Amendment protects as much speech as possible. It doesn't make a judgment as to who's right or who's wrong, because that leaves it up for the people to decide who's right or who's wrong. So, like I said, if just to use an example, maybe some people would have been very happy for President Obama to make certain decisions about speech because they agree with him. Well, that's presidential power that you're talking about. Well, now that President Trump's in office, there are those that disagree with him. So do you want the president making that call? And so if you agree, depending on who's in office, then I think that's telling you that you're not adhering to free speech principles. You're adhering to matters of politics, left or right, in terms of whether you agree with it or not. And so I think what we learn, at a college campus is that we believe in a diversity of ideas. Let's hear it. Let's talk about it. Sometimes you have controversial speakers come to campus. I think that's valuable, so we can talk about it. It's not about silencing voices. If you're engaging in that, then I think that would be a very bad thing to engage in. But that's my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you a lot. Yeah, this was.
Is that helpful?
Awesome.
Is that what you're looking for?
Really awesome.